Hi, my name is Keith Brooks. I am a nerd, but I don't think I'm as much of a nerd as I potentially could be. Like, I'm not really into anime a lot. I'm trying to get more and educate myself about anime, and I'm not much of a gamer. I like video games a lot, but I only really play them if they're Mortal Kombat or Batman or some IP that I already know and have a familiarity with. And I rarely ever finish them, but I kind of want to change that. So I think the way I'm going to start by doing that is playing every Super Mario game ever made. Fuck. Here we go. Like, when I say every single Mario game ever made, I'm painfully aware that there are more Mario games than there are moments of life. So it's going to be a challenge, but I also figure that Mario has the biggest variety of games within its franchise, and I'm not just going to play the Mario games. I'm going to play every spin-off of the Mario games. I'm not going to necessarily worry about specific ports unless Mario is only involved with that specific port, and then I'll take that into consideration when I play the game. But it's awesome how cool Mario makes you feel on the inside, kind of like Christmas. And I figure it's a good challenge to myself. You know what I mean? And I want to get myself more into the video game space, and maybe I'll learn some stuff about video games along the way. I can talk to you and teach you about the video games, make some video essays, which is kind of what I want to do. And fuck yeah, play some games. And I have to include those spin-offs because it would seem inappropriate should I not, since Mario himself starts off as a spin-off. So we're going to start this whole thing with Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong was the 1981 arcade release that would irrevocably alter and change history, not only within the world of video games, but pop culture in general. It broke new ground in terms of what was expected, accepted, and possible within video game systems. It revolutionized the at-home market, introduced iconic characters that would still be a staple of the industry 40 years later, broke numerous records, and perhaps, most importantly, came to redefine the company that made it, Nintendo. Donkey Kong wouldn't be the first game that the Japanese-based company created, but it was definitely one of the earliest ones, despite the company at the time having existed for nearly 100 years. We recognize Nintendo Company as a multinational video game and multimedia giant, headquartered in Kyoto, Japan, but with influence and recognition the world over. But the company didn't start that way. Founded in 1889 as Nintendo Karuta or Nintendo Koppai by Fusajiro Yamauchi, the company opened as a small shop that was within the gaming industry, but a vastly different one than what we know them for now. Nintendo, written in kanji, has a few interpretations. The phrase can either mean leave luck to heaven or leave your good fortune to Tengu, a mythical deity, but the legendary god is culturally associated with, and his name even is slang for, gambling. So it could have a meaning of leave your good fortune to gambling. And I know that sounds like an odd name for one to choose, but Nintendo started off making playing cards, yet not the type of playing cards you might be thinking of. Hanafuda cards, often called flower cards, are a little smaller than standard playing cards. They're generally thicker and made with better material. They sacrifice the typical suits of spades and diamonds, get rid of the numerical system, and replace it with pictures of flowers, man-made objects, other assorted items the artist chooses. Each deck will have one card with a human on it, and the cards themselves are used for a variety of different games. When Yamauchi first opened his Nintendo shop, the Hanafuda weren't selling that well, but as Japan's authorities began to crack down on the illegal activities of gambling, they eventually outlawed all typical Western playing cards. All that was left was the Hanafuda, so suddenly Fusajiro had a thriving business on his hands. It continued to thrive while trying various lines of business until in the 1960s it acquired a legal status as a public company. In 1977, Nintendo distributed their first console, Color TV game. In fact, 5 different dedicated home video game consoles under the Color TV game banner were released between 1977 and 1980, all trying to give consumers the arcade experience in their homes. if their homes were in Japan. It was only ever released there. Selling amazingly well, it was and remains the highest sales figure of all the first generation video game consoles. But it wasn't just about the at-home sales. Nintendo wanted to hit you where your quarters were, in the arcade. In the early 1980s, the arcade scene wasn't necessarily in its infancy, with the first arcade game having premiered in 1971. We could describe the art form as its preteen years, still kind of awkward and developing into a fully functioning reality at an increasing pace. 1980 saw a massive success with the introduction of the iconic Pac-Man, and Nintendo sought to create a property that could not only compete with the ghost-eating legend, but also help them break into a level they had yet to conquer: the American market. Nintendo America had opened in 1980 with the sole purpose of importing arcade games from Japan to the Western audience. The assumption was that video games, not yet the staple of youth entertainment they are now, were going to catch on in a big way and soon. So in 1981, Nintendo America bet big on a Japanese release by Nintendo called Radar Scope. They ordered 3,000 cabinets. They were only able to sell 1,000. The game just wasn't as popular as Pac-Man. So, writing back to their parent company in Japan, they requested a conversion kit and some new software, hopefully a new game that would be a bigger hit. To create this game that held all of the company's hopes was a task that Nintendo president gave to Shigeru Miyamoto, an employee who had previously designed the art for one semi-successful game, but this would be his first time as a game designer, and the game he was to design was Popeye the Sailor Man. Nintendo had acquired the license to make the popular newspaper strip and cartoon into an arcade sensation, and Miyamoto looked to classic damsel in distress storylines like Beauty and the Beast and King Kong for inspiration. The storyline would be simple: Popeye trying to save a kidnapped olive oil from his arch-nemesis Bluto. With the concept in place and moving into the design stage, suddenly the first barrel was thrown into the plan. Nintendo lost the Popeye license. With archetypes still in place, Miyamoto decided he would create his own original characters to fill the voids now created by the absence of the spinach-eating sailor. The influence of King Kong stuck around, as the oafish brute of Bluto was turned into a simian antagonist. The damsel in distress was an easy evolution to a damsel in a dress, and the designer thought that the hero should be an everyman, a blue-collar protagonist that would serve as an avatar for the player, someone easy to relate to. Once the decision came to place the story within the setting of a factory, the hero's occupation seemed like an obvious choice to check all the boxes on Miyamoto's wish list. A factory worker would be trying to save a pretty lady from a giant ape. It was kind of a ridiculous premise, but one that, coupled with the cute chibi-like character designs, seemed fun and entertaining, like a Saturday morning cartoon. To ease the technical burden of animating the main character, it was decided he would wear a hat. That way they wouldn't have to animate hair. He would have a mustache, so that way they wouldn't have to animate his mouth, and he'd have a red jumpsuit with a blue shirt to make him stand out from the background. Along with chief engineer Gunpei Yoko and 3 other designers, Miyamoto designed a game that would break new ground by using graphics for characterizations, as in having the characters actually emote specific feelings, having cutscenes and multiple differing stages. It was also the first game where the story was integral to the gameplay, and the first one where you actually saw the story being told on the screen. In this case, the story was that a construction worker had a pet gorilla who fell in love with its owner's girlfriend, kidnapped her, went on a rampage, and the overall clad hero had to save the day. With a budget of $267,000 to create it, Miyamoto's initial idea was to have a warehouse full of seesaws, which barrels would be thrown on, propelling our main protagonist into the air to different platforms. When the engineers explained how difficult that might be, Miyamoto had a revolutionary idea, something that had never been seen in video games before: have the character jump. This was such a revolutionary idea that for a while the character's name was even Jumpman, but more on that later. So through jumping and the ladders placed in locations that would make OSHA have a heart attack, the player would go from platform to platform until saving the day. Thus the name of a genre of video games was born: the platform game. While Donkey Kong isn't the first platform game in existence, it is the game that was being referred to when the term was coined. Also known as a platformer or a jump and run game, it's a subgenre within action video games that started with the 1980 arcade game Space Panic, which included ladders, but not the jumping. The main objective of a platform game is for the player character to move between points of different terrain within an environment. During the peak of platform popularity in the 80s and 90s, this type of game made up between a quarter and a third of all console games. The increased popularity of first-person shooters were the only thing to take it down a level, but the term itself became popularized in the late 80s, 1989 to be more specific, as a UK press article looked back on the influence Donkey Kong had had on the gaming industry. The gameplay, in hindsight, was relatively simple, but at the time, it was as iconoclastic as the Beatles or Marlon Brando or Martha Graham, something no one had ever seen before. At the time, video games were a repetition of the same mechanics over and over again. Sure, Pac-Man changed how many ghosts you needed to eat and where the cherries were, but they were all mazes. Nothing drastically altered from level to level. Donkey Kong didn't operate that way. With 4 distinct stages, each offering different mechanics and different aesthetics, once the player conquered the mighty Kong, the game would repeat with increased difficulty. The 22nd iteration of this, in the arcade version, is often called the kill screen because due to a programming error, the protagonist dies within a few seconds. Points are awarded for leaping over obstacles, destroying objects with a hammer, collecting the miscellaneous items that the damsel in distress has lost like hats, parasols, and purses, removing rivets from platforms, and completing each stage. The player starts with 3 lives and gains a life when they reach 7,000 points. A life is lost if the player touches Donkey Kong, an enemy object falls too far, or lets the ever-decreasing bonus counter reach 0. Using 20 kilobytes of data, the game incorporated Yukio Kinioka's soundtrack to serve as the score for differing levels and story events. Once the game was ported to different systems, the opening theme, the one seen mostly in the start screen, was changed. The reason is unknown, but the tune was inspired as a variation on the Dragnet TV show theme. The character set, scoreboard, upper HUD display, and fonts are all almost identical to Radar Scope, with mostly palette differences. This, of course, was due to the fact that Radar Scope was the game that they were aiming to replace. From a technical standpoint, Nintendo needed some help with the mechanical aspects of the game. They hired company Ikegami Shushinki as a subcontractor to put the game on ROM chips printed onto circuit boards. In 1983, this decision, however, would almost bite them on the toadstool, as Ikegami unsuccessfully sued for ownership of the game. Though they had no hand in the design, they felt the actual craftsmanship of the materials for the game gave them partial ownership. The courts disagreed, citing that Nintendo had already paid them for their work and their ask exceeded the contracts which they had signed. But that won't come until later, until after the game has become a success. Let's jump back to the previous stage, where we're almost at completion. The game had always been intended to mainly target the North American audience, so it was an obvious choice that it should have an English title. Miyamoto found the ape to be the strongest character visually, so elected to name the game after him. There are a lot of legends surrounding why the character is called Donkey Kong, that it was Monkey Kong but someone couldn't understand a thick accent, that a fax came in blurred, or that a child who couldn't say the word monkey coined the titular character's appellation. And Miyamoto says, stupid. Not to the theories, but that's the reason it's called what it is. He wanted something that suggests dumb or stupid gorilla. In a case of interesting transliteration and translation, we can follow an interesting evolution. Kong is easy. In various parts of the world, it's come to be synonymous with apes ever since the 1933 film. But donkey? In English, the colloquial term jackass is used to mean a person who is a jerk or an idiot. Another word for jackass is donkey. So we were incredibly close to having a game called Jackass Kong. But what about the other 2 characters? Well, the damsel in distress, the first female to ever have dialogue in a video game, though it be in the form of a speech bubble, was originally called Lady. And although the print ads for the ported Game & Watch version of the game would have her name listed as Louise, the character would most commonly be known to audiences as Pauline. It was the crew at Nintendo America that were responsible for the 2 name changes that would occur within the video game. When they received Donkey Kong, the damsel in distress was just called her original title, but they felt she deserved something with more character. Pauline was suggested after Polly James, wife of Nintendo America's warehouse manager, Don James. The name stuck. Though Pauline wouldn't be as significant as her love interest of this smash hit, she would continue on in the Nintendo shared universe, appearing in the Donkey Kong sequels and the Mario vs. Donkey Kong franchise. Originally intended as the player's girlfriend, it's later revised that Pauline and Mario were just friends. Yeah, sure. Pauline would make later appearances in some of the sports games, some of the racing games, and most notably Super Mario Odyssey, where we learn that she's a jazz singer and a mayor. But rewriting of Nintendo history wouldn't end with Mario and Pauline's relationship. The titular character of Donkey Kong would spawn a lot of sequels, and for an entire generation, he was the bad guy who had tried to kill Mario with flaming barrels of oil. That is, until the early 90s, with the revitalization of the series with a game called Donkey Kong Country. In the guide to the widely popular game, it's revealed that the pet of Mario from this original game was actually named Cranky Kong, or Donkey Kong's grandfather. That's the new story. Until Donkey Kong 64, that is, when it says that the original Donkey Kong is actually good guy Donkey Kong's dad. Either way, it's not the ape with the tie. But before we get to the sequels, let's talk about the biggest star to emerge from this game, or really any game ever created. The main hero of the story, Mario. Or should I say, Mr. Video? After the loss of the Popeye license, the challenge became to create a protagonist that was fun but easy to design, and Miyamoto felt that they had hit the mark. But thinking of a larger picture, Miyamoto assumed that there would be other games his team would work on after this, and saw the leaping hero as a potential signature for any future creation. The idea was that anytime they would need a generic character or were running low on time, they could just put in this sprite and it would serve as a cameo. Miyamoto says this line of thinking was inspired by one of his favorite directors, Alfred Hitchcock, who would often cameo in his films. Seldom a role that would have any impact on the plotline, but if you were a fan or just keen of eye, you would be able to spot him. Mr. Video, as he was originally dubbed, would serve the same way. A staple character for Nintendo to use whenever they needed. And so the game about Mr. Video, his girlfriend, and their pet ape was ready to ship to the States. But when it arrived, Nintendo America wasn't completely sold on the names. The Pauline change occurred, and Nintendo America president Minoru Arakawa thought that Mr. Video sounded too generic. His suggestion was Jumpman. It sounded like kind of a few popular brands of the day, such as Walkman, Pac-Man, Spider-Man. So out with Mr. Video, in with Jumpman. A localization of the video game began, meaning some of the Japanese elements were being converted to more Western-friendly things, mostly words and text, etc. But during this process, Nintendo of America's warehouse landlord, Mario Segale, had become irate with the company's inability to pay their bills on time. With the fledgling company owing months and months of back rent, a reported screaming match broke out between Segale and the company president Arakawa. Finally, the landlord was convinced he would be paid, showed some leniency, and as a thank you to his kindness, the company opted to name their new protagonist after him. Thus, Mario was born. Over the years, he would become Super. His occupation would change from a factory worker, a carpenter to be specific, to plumber, doctor, race car driver. He would leave New York City for more fantastic worlds. His fraternal twin brother, Luigi, would be introduced. And in 1993, a live-action film gave the first utterance to his last name, Mario. Mario would become the iconic representative of not only Nintendo, but video games in general. As one of the most iconic and prolific pop culture entities ever created, he went on to become exactly what Miyamoto had envisioned, a character that could be used in anything. But how did that first game favor? The Donkey Kong arcade release proved to be the highest grossing video game in both 1981, its release year, and in 1982, selling 8 million units. Nintendo then licensed the game on the biggest at-home system creator, Coleco, and across their various consoles, sold an additional 6 million cartridges. The ports of the first 3 generations of home consoles alone sold 15 million units worldwide, and that doesn't include downloads, emulators, or where the game was included in a collection. By 1982, sales of cabinets within the US were up to $280 million. In today's money, that would be $830 million. It won the 1982 Arcade Award Single Player Video Game of the Year and the runner-up award for the Coin-Op Game of the Year, losing out only to Tron. The Coleco-owned Atari 8-bit computer conversion of the game contains one of the longest undiscovered Easter eggs in video game history. Programmer Landon Dyer's initials appear if the player dies under certain very specific conditions and returns to the title screen. This remained undiscovered for 26 years until Dyer revealed it on his blog. Don Hodges would later discover the appropriate steps through use of an emulator and a debugger to trace through the game's code. But that wasn't the only conversion of the game, not by far. The success of the arcade cabinet of Donkey Kong directly led to the creation of the Family Computer, or Famicom, and in turn the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NES. The hardware was largely based on Donkey Kong hardware, so much so they had even taken a Donkey Kong cabinet to a semiconductor chip manufacturing company called Richo for analysis. Richo would create the picture processing unit chip for the Nintendo systems. But the Famicom and NES ports did have some alterations from the source material. The Famicom edition coming out in 1983 and NES in 1986, the cutscenes and the cement factory scenes were removed as the new device didn't have the memory for them. But the Dragnet song, as mentioned earlier, this is where that comes into play. A 1994 remake for the Game Boy added like 97 initial stages, so that shows you the ever-evolving potential these video game systems had. Every single Nintendo system has had a version of the original Donkey Kong available on it, from Super Nintendo, which included it as a level of Donkey Kong Country, to the GameCube's Arcade Classics collection. I played it on a Switch. But there were also sequels. Donkey Kong Jr., the revitalized Donkey Kong Country series, a new franchise entitled Mario vs. Donkey Kong that reunited the original three characters. Donkey Kong was even included in NES Remix, a game that allowed characters from different franchises to cross over. In the Donkey Kong stage, Link from Zelda has to go through the game, a feat made more difficult by his inability to jump. As of 2015, all versions of just the original Donkey Kong have grossed $4.4 billion in revenue. But with any success comes three important residual effects: imitators, controversy, and influence. By April of 1982, Miyamoto's characters were being used in breakfast cereals, toys, and television cartoons. It was with all of this exposure that Sid Sheinberg, president of MCA and Universal City Studios, and a seasoned lawyer in his own right, learned of the game's success and suspected that it might be a trademark infringement of their film, King Kong. While the film won't enter public domain until 2029, the first appearance of the Great Ape was actually a novelization of the film that was published an entire year prior to the film's release, so in 1932. At the time, the law stated that the copyright had to be renewed every 28 years for some arbitrary reason. Universal had failed to do so on this book only, so technically the character entered public domain in 1961. Universal had actually used this as a defense in a previous court case, a fact brought up by Nintendo attorney John Kirby. Universal was able to file enough cease and desist letters to Nintendo's licensees of the game to cause a profit share to occur, but Nintendo wouldn't budge and saw it through to court, where thanks to Kirby's proof of Universal's hypocrisy, the court found in Nintendo's favor. Universal appealed, but on October 4th, 1984, the court upheld the previous decision. In 1985, Nintendo and the licensees even countersued, winning $1.8 million. To thank Kirby, Nintendo gave him a gift of a $30,000 sailboat named Donkey Kong, along with exclusive worldwide rights to use the name for any other sailboats. Oh, and one more thing. A titular character from a video game franchise was named after him. That's right, Kirby. But perhaps most importantly, this court case taught Nintendo and the world that they could stand toe-to-toe with industry giants. But they say that imitation is the highest form of flattery, and if that's the case, then Donkey Kong was drowning in compliments. By the end of 1982, there were at least 17 clones of the popular arcade actively on the market, meaning games that copied the programming and the layout and the concept, just changing the sprites of the characters, most of them including an ape of some sort. From Crazy Kong to Conky Kong, Donkey King, Locker, an actual King Kong adaptation, Killer Gorilla, Killer Kong, Crazy Kong 64, Congo Kong, Hard Hat Mac, Cannonball Blitz, Canyon Climber, Jumpman, Miner 2049er, Mr. Robot and his Robot Factory, Congo Bongo, just to name a lot of them. Nintendo, fresh off of their win with Universal, tried to take legal action against some of these companies, not over the character likeness, but over the format and structure of their games being copied. It was in these cases that the foundation allowing computer programming to be trademarked was established, as Nintendo, estimating to have lost $100 million to clones by 1983, would go on to win over 30 cases related to the theft of the Donkey Kong program by 1985. By 1982, the success of Donkey Kong had led to more than 50 different companies in the US and Japan licensing the characters for various merchandise and the ilk, board games, pajamas, manga, to name a few. In 1983, Ruby Spears, the animation studio behind Thundar the Barbarian, Centurions, and the Mega Man series, produced a Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. cartoon for the Saturday Supercade program on CBS. The initial show lasted for 2 seasons and followed Mario and Pauline chasing after an escaped Donkey Kong in Scooby-Doo-like hijinks. 1982 also saw the release of the songs Do the Donkey Kong by Buckner and Garcia, Donkey Kong by Arcade and the Video Victims. It was referenced by artists like DJ Jazzy Jeff and The Fresh Prince, Trace Adkins, shows like The Simpsons, Futurama, Community, Crank Yankers, and Fairly Odd Parents. Sound effects from the Atari 2600 version are the staple of video game sounds you hear in film and television, where there's a good chance you've heard the phrase, "it's on like Donkey Kong," first coined by Ice Cube in 1992 and trademarked by Nintendo in 2010. In 1996, Next Generation listed the arcade game as number 50 on their top 100 games of all time. In February of 2006, Nintendo Power rated it the 148th best game made on a Nintendo system. In 2017, the Strong National Museum of Play inducted Donkey Kong to its World Video Game Hall of Fame. Today, in 2023, Donkey Kong is the 5th most popular arcade game among collectors. The Simian character will go on to get another show on the Fox network from 1998 to 2000, appear in the film Pixels, the soon-to-be-released Mario film, and launched an entire niche market of competitive gaming. If you want to see a great film about that, I highly recommend the documentary King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. But whether it be the multiple spin-off sequels, either in the Donkey Kong franchise or the subsequent Mario endeavors, the cartoons, the movies, the toys, the fact Eminem is a self-proclaimed fanatic for the original game and says his personal score puts him in the top 30 worldwide players of all time, it's undeniable that Donkey Kong revolutionized the video gaming world. And that's even without all the adventures that the mustache protagonist would later go on.
All right, so here we are. We're going to play Donkey Kong on the Nintendo Switch Lite. You can't see that. It's way too bright. Oh, God. So it is Tuesday, 4:37 p.m. I'm going to die over and over again. Hopefully just in the game and not in life. I'm already fucked. There's fire. I don't know. This is just a poor construction building. I'm running. I'm about to die. I died. It's going to be a long show. I just died again. I broke my ankles. You can't fall from one platform to another. Got a hammer. Okay, it's getting more intense. I almost died hard there, man. Okay, so I got the first level. You just gotta climb all the way to the top. You don't even have to fight him at the beginning. What the fuck is this? Have I never played this game before? So the first level has the hammer. I thought they all looked like that. Oh, I just fell and broke my ankles and died. So every time I die, I gotta start all the way over. And I'm a child of the 80s. I should have remembered that. But I think I was too young to play this in the arcade. So I also grew up rural, so not a lot of arcades. Ah! It was the double attack. I jumped over one and one came down the ladder. This is rough, man. God damn it, I missed. I'm not good at video games in any capacity. I've beat level one time. I also like the way Mario runs like he's got like a fucked up foot. Okay, beat level 1. Okay, so I can't touch the floor. Got it. Okay. Can't touch that thing either. Got it. How did I die? Oh, maybe I have to do the other one. Maybe I have to go from the bottom. Okay. Strategy's making sense now. Some of these barrels the motherfucker throwing are going wild. My biggest concern is all the fires I've left going in this place. Like, everything's on fire. I died. Died quickly. So walking off something is not great for us. Too far of a jump. This game's from 1981, so it's older than me. Man, fuck. I died on that one. Fuck! Double attack. Also, I don't really think wood and oil instantly make fireballs that live. Fuck. The hammer is also like a hindrance at times. Okay, first level. I don't think I'm going for hammers on the first level ever again. Because I can get there quicker a lot without the hammers. So I'm going to wait till I get really close to this motherfucker. So they always fall right there. Fuck! Beat level 2. I don't know what I'm supposed to do in level 3. But apparently it's not punch Donkey Kong in the dick. That's not what I'm supposed to do. I thought everything looked like level 1. That was my gross misconception of what this game was. I'm so scared that one of these fucking barrels is going to come down my ladder. That's level 1 beat kind of quickly. Fuck you, I was right there. Okay, that's 2 beat. Do I need to, like, beat all this shit? Fuck, I fell and broke my legs. Oh, fuck, I died. I like the implication that Mario's going to heaven. He, like, instantly gets a halo. That zigzag fucking barrel? Man, I'm feeling away. Alright, so that's 1. I got 1 life. Nope, dead. Fell too far. I'm also not going to do, like, look for pointers or anything. I'm just going to try to figure it out myself. Fuck.
I'm done with that first one. I'm done with Donkey Kong. That's fucking crazy. Like, I guess in my mind, I always thought the game was like 99 levels. It's 3. At least on the Nintendo, it's 3. On the arcade, it's apparently 4. Granted, it still took me like 2 hours because I played some, then I died, and then I went and watched Murder, She Wrote for a second, and then I came back and played a little bit more. But yeah, the first level is the classic one, and I thought there were like 9,000 of those that looked exactly like that, where it's just running up ladders. And then the second one is the elevator level, and the third one is destroying the building in an act of domestic terrorism until Donkey Kong dies, and then you're reunited with Pauline, and then that's it. I guess those are 3 stages, and then the level, then you play again with increasing intensity and difficulty. But fuck that, that's not why I'm here. I'm here just to be able to say I beat Donkey Kong, and I did. So yeah, look, there's a lot of things that are in that game that are the classic components of Mario that I think of. From Mario looking kind of like fucking Mario, to saving some broad, to having a hammer, to having to dodge bad guys that look like classic Mario bad guys. The sounds are very Mario. Whoever was writing that Nintendo music, man, that shit slap. You know what I'm saying? I guess it was arcade music at that point, but whatever. You get the idea. Yeah. I'm like, there's a pep in my step now, just because I thought this was gonna last like for 6 months, like me trying to beat Donkey Kong, but it was only 2 hours. That's fucking crazy. Like, I still have the same shirt on. See that shit? That's crazy. Yeah, and I did it on the Nintendo Switch. I did play a little bit on because I was so shocked that there were only 3 levels, and then when it started over, I'm like, am I missing something being different? So I looked at the the original arcade emulator, and it has like cutscenes and shit. Like it has, I mean, they are, you know, graphically primitive, but there are like moments where you see him kidnap her over and over again and take her to a different section. The Nintendo one doesn't have that. But still, it's super fun and it's challenging, and it's a lot of like just memorizing. Not even memorizing. It's like, okay, well, this guy goes on the third beat, he flies over this ladder, so I can't be climbing that ladder then. So I just gotta wait for this guy, then go. Wait for this guy, then go. Which is like classic video game move 101, and it's all like fucking right there. And this game came out in 81, so 81, 91, 2001, 2011, 2021. It's 42 years old. This game is older than me. Holy shit. I dig it. I know Donkey Kong shows up in other things, and I'm recording this part before I do the research part, which I think I'm going to put in the middle of the episode. But I don't think that this Donkey Kong is Donkey Kong. I think it's somebody else. I wonder if Pauline shows up again, or if that's just Mario's first baby mama. We don't talk about her. You know what I mean? That'll be interesting to find out if there is a connected Mario mythos and that character shows back up. I don't know. Yeah, I'm excited to find out. And I'm excited to see what the next game is, because I have no fucking idea. So I'm excited to play more. It's probably Donkey Kong 2. I kind of feel it's Donkey Kong 2. But yeah, so that's, you know, if I had to rate this with gold coins, but I don't have anything else as a standard yet to rate it against. Let's do this in tiers. People like tiers. So tier 1 would be like, this is fucking classic, everyone should play it. Tier 2 would be, this is really great. Tier 3 would be meh. Tier 4 is like, fuck it, it's difficult, but I feel accomplished that I defeated it. And tier 4 is like, fuck this game, but there were some fun moments. And tier 5 is, I never want to touch this again. I want to say this is tier 2, just because I think the primary aspect of that is just because it is a classic. Like, there are nostalgic feelings about it, even though, yeah, I don't think I've ever really dedicated any time to playing this game, or else I would have known there's only 3 fucking levels. Like, so I live, you know, I'm from Georgia. I'm from Atlanta, well, I'm from north of Atlanta, where I grew up in a rural area, so there weren't a lot of arcades, so I missed this arcade thing. The best we had was like at Sparkles, but that was also when I was a kid, and I was born in 85, so by the time I was able to go to Sparkles, it was like Mortal Kombat era more than Donkey Kong era, so I missed out on that era of arcade games. But yeah, this was fun. It was fun. It was a good time. I like it. Throw barrels at people. The other thing that really shocks me about Donkey Kong is like the physics are pretty fucking solid. Not that there's a giant gorilla, but that the game is like, hey, if you jump from too high of a thing, you shatter your fucking ankles and you die. That's pretty intense. Also, the game's very presumptuous because when Mario dies, he gets a halo. So at least we know Mario is a good man and he's not going to hell, I guess. I don't think when barrels make contact with oil, they instantly burst into flames. Not just flames, but sentient flames. There's something that flies at you in the second level that I don't know what the fuck it is. There's a little bit of Pac-Man action going on in the third level. Whenever you get a hammer or ghosts, you can now eat them or whatever. I don't know. I don't know why there's an umbrella. I don't know why there's a purse. I guess those are Pauline's. I'm just collecting Pauline's things because I'm a simp cuck boy. That's the new name of the show. Simp Cuck Boy, the game. I don't know what Donkey Kong's deal was. I guess he just like dug redheads. Which I feel you, man. I feel you. And And it's also weird to think that all the data they had was for 3 stages. That's crazy. My cancer had more stages than that. That's fucked up. Fucked up joke.